Hello, everyone. We hope all of you are staying healthy and safe at your homes. We'd like to welcome you for the first online Fabric Spotlight Talk. This is the first for us, and it'll be an interesting session. I promise you with Bask Iyer, who's the Chief Information and Chief Digital Transformation Officer at VMware. In the Spotlight Talks, we discuss cloud, infrastructure, enterprise world with the leaders from the space. Bask, I can certainly certify you are a leader in the space. I've known you for a very long time, and I really appreciate you joining us.
Rajan, my pleasure. Thank you.
So it's been 6 weeks in lockdown, and I also remember just before we got locked down, we met in Chennai, and then I'm glad that we all made it back before we got shut out. How are you holding up?
Well, I think I've gone through phases. The first week was this adrenaline pumping in because you had to, all of a sudden, we've all worked from home, but to try to enable 35,000 people to work remotely, do all hands meetings, sales calls, and so on. So there was a lot of, I think, fun and pressure to make that happen. And then we had to get all of Dell employees online as well. So that was good fun as a team for IT. The second week, we got into, maybe another few weeks, 2 weeks, we can handle this. The last few weeks, I've been thinking about, while I feel good about where we are and how well we've done, how well we've recovered and handling our customers, I'm really concerned about people who cannot work from home, right? So now I'm thinking about, this is more than just us showcasing technology and working from home, but, I'm really concerned about businesses that are not able to sustain, the chefs, the restaurant workers, and so on. So I think we need to, now it's more reflective. I said we have to come together and try to get out of this mess together. So my thoughts have slowly changed from immediate firefighting response to feeling really proud about my team and how well we recovered to now it's like, there's more to this than just a recovery story. There's a lot of lives at stake, and what are we going to do about it? And that's kind of where my thoughts are.
I agree with you, Baska. It has been quite a change. As someone said, we live in interesting times. As we dig into what's been also VMware's response to this virus and the situation that we are in, I'd like to at least wind back things a little bit and just talk about your personal journey before you got to VMware.
Yeah, so I grew up in India, as you know, and I finished my engineering, and I was actually, when I was very young, I was selling refrigerators and air conditioners in Bangalore. And I thought I was doing well. But at that time, the landlord wanted to sell me the office I was renting from him. He thought of me like a son, and he says, "Young boy, if you pay another 1,000 rupees, you could buy this building. It's worth its weight in gold." And I remember telling him, who the heck would buy real estate in Bangalore? It's such a sleepy town. There's nobody there. There's no traffic. It's not a place for a single person. So in a nutshell, I mean, if I just bought that building, I don't have to tell a long story anymore. I mean, it would have been over. I would have made my money, happy. I decided to sell computers, and I didn't know anything about computers. I could service refrigerators. I know how to fix them, but I didn't know how to fix computers. So I decided to come to the US to get educated in computer science, to go back to just sell computers. That was kind of my goal. Then I came to this country. I fell in love with the United States. I found my wife in Florida Tech, and and I just stayed here, and this computer journey has just taken off, in the last 30 years, 35 years, it's just taken off. And so my career has benefited from it. I spent a couple of years in NASA, in Cape Canaveral, working on solar panels for NASA. And then spent 5 years in Midwest, manufacturing automation. They call it IoT now, but a long time ago, we just called it computer integrated manufacturing. And then all the manufacturing disappeared, if you remember. And then I went to Honeywell. I went to Johnson & Johnson Pharmaceuticals for 10 years, J&J in New Jersey, and GlaxoSmithKline in UK. And then spent about 10 years in Honeywell, in all over the world. I was started as a Honeywell digital transformation person in 2000. Then I was a GM in Asia Pac for Honeywell out of China. Moved the family there. Then I was a group CIO for Honeywell for 3-4 years. And then 7 years ago when we met, I always worked with Silicon Valley, or not 10 years ago. but I never worked in Silicon Valley. All my friends came here, obviously, but I have never really lived in Silicon Valley. So I had the itch to come and join Juniper Networks, which was, as you know, was growing tremendously at that time. And we had the legendary leader called Pradeep Sindhu at that time. So a charismatic leader. So I joined him and Kevin Johnson, etc. Stayed with them for 5 years. We met. I remember that well there, and I met Zoom and ThoughtSpot and several other companies in the Valley. And now I'm in love with the Valley. I mean, it's amazing that, I have not been here for that long. It's hardly 10 years. And the amount of people you meet and network has been fabulous. And the last 5 years I've been with VMware. I started as a CIO for VMware, and then Michael Dell bought EMC about 2-3 years ago, and he wanted me to be the CIO for EMC and Dell, to put those two companies together. So I was a CIO for VMware and the CIO for Dell and EMC for a period of time. Two separate companies, although somewhat in the family. And then I did a stint. I came back to VMware, did a stint as a CIO and also as a GM for IoT. And we met again briefly during that time. And now I'm the Chief Digital Officer, Transformation Officer for VMware. And I have, in addition to IT, the digital transformation for VMware, and also operational elements that goes with things like SaaS transformation that we are going through. And integration, we just announced integration of Carbon Black and Pivotal. So my team leads that. So that's kind of what I do in VMware.
Fantastic. Actually, you preempted a couple of questions, but it's great to know about the initiatives that you're taking. Given the existing situation, what is the biggest challenge that you find as you're integrating two new acquisitions? You've got a remote workforce, and how are all these playing out given the situation we are in?
I think it's a very high test of EQ right now, because we work well within VMware, and you both of us work very well because we've met before in social circumstances. We know each other. But if you didn't know each other, to just go on a Zoom or on a telephone call and establish, it's not that simple, right? So we, in VMware and other places, we've taken the time to build a glue between people, and then you can just pick up a phone and get things done. It is a little difficult when you're integrating a company. We haven't built the glue with them, and they will think of this big company acquiring them. Are they going to change the culture? Are we going to go to their systems or our systems? Who is Bask? Who is Pat? Those kind of questions come in. So a little bit more communication is needed. A little bit more EQ is needed, and it is going extremely well. Actually, I mean, I have to say it's going extremely well. But it's not as easy as going and grabbing a beer with somebody and working something out. And as I got older, I started thinking, and I actually believe that everything can be solved over a beer. I just believe every problem in the world, you can just get a beer and solve it. But now that you cannot just grab somebody and get a beer, it's a little bit more complicated from that standpoint. It's going well, but I wish we would have, pressed some flesh and we're able to meet the people, and then you can go remote and do Zoom. So this is a big challenge for me. We've never done an integration by remote control, if you will. So far, it's going well, but I always wonder, that you have to pay an extra caution to the human part of the integration.
Fantastic. I prefer red wine over beer, but the beer sounds as well.
That's good. That's good.
I was listening to your acquisitions. You made Carbon Black and others. It seems that there is a cloud story that is emerging from these kind of acquisitions, Pivotal. So, what do you think are the key areas for VMware's cloud adoption? How do you think of it from your own perspective as well as VMware's perspective of cloud?
Yeah, I think VMware has stuck close to our roots of being like the ubiquitous infrastructure provider. If you looked at why I was a customer of VMware when I was in Honeywell and other places, it was one of the unique software that I can be on multiple vendors. So I'm not tied to a particular hardware provider. VMware has continued the journey by getting into the network space. As you very well know, VeloCloud was one of the Fabric companies that we acquired. And that gave us into foray into and with Nicira and NSX into network virtualization. So now we can isolate, do more of the network in the software, like software-defined WAN and so on. And then we did more work on storage, right? We did storage virtualization with our vSAN technology and so on. So all that helped virtualizing and doing more and more of the infrastructure and software. Now we want to have the same kind of play for cloud as well. So I have a feeling that nobody wants, you should not put everything on one cloud. That's my belief. And if this crisis has taught us something is all the boards would be very careful on, previously they would have asked you questions on disaster recovery. Now they're going to really want to know, where is your data? Where's your storage? Where's your infrastructure? And what happens if that fails? So I believe that, you need to have, it's a multi-cloud kind of a journey going forward, and you want to make sure that you take advantage of all the innovations from Google, Amazon, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, etc. Plus, we run a lot of our infrastructure also internally. We have a large private LAN, private network, and private data center that is completely lights out. So we are able to operate now, and hardly any people go inside the data center to run. So if you run your own infrastructure efficiently using the products that VMware makes, you could run a very effective, data center yourself as well. So there's a private cloud, public cloud. How do you hook them all together through the networking? So that's our play. Then what we found is some people are that's good from an infrastructure play. People also, then it comes to applications. So my own journey in Juniper was I had a story. I said we should go to mobile first and cloud first, and everybody was fine with that. The first 10% of the application went to the cloud pretty easily. So you could pick your Office 365 or a SaaS applications like Salesforce, but then 80-90% of your apps were still running in a data center on VMware and other software, and you need to migrate them, and that was not that simple. So the heavy lifting comes in when you take the remaining bit of the applications and you want to spread them along on the cloud. So here, you need tools and technology to do that. So that's first. The pivotal story, what is interesting about that is you need to do, so most technology companies that are in the Valley, they know how to do modern development. But not every company in the world knows how to do it. I mean, we can talk about containers, you can talk about Kubernetes and so on, but people want a prescriptive way from people, process, and technology to create a modern development environment. And as far as I know, Pivotal is one of the few companies that was able to come in, and I used them in Dell, and it helped me a lot with transformation. It was one of the few companies that come back and tell you how you select people, how you do design, how do you get businesses involved, and then gives you a prescriptive stack of technology to develop in, so you are multi-cloud ready. We talk about agile and other kind of things, but how do you do this in a bank in New York? How do you get the business to be agile? So that was a very logical acquisition for us to say, here's another way to take your apps and migrate to the cloud journey. Of course, you want to do it all securely, right? I mean, absolutely want to do it securely. And Carbon Black was, a lot of people said, not only do you want a virtual machine, a container, an environment, we obviously wanted to be, inherently or secure. And my CEO does a good job, which is actually true. There are so many security players in the market right now. So if I put a page of even the security vendors that I use, it'll fill the whole wall here. And I don't feel any much more secure than I was 5 years ago, in spite of buying all these products. And there are 30 other companies who are ready to sell, saying, hey, we can help you with APT and so on. So unless you built-in security and you eliminate some of these different tools, I think you're just getting a false sense of security. So with Carbon Black, our vision is can we give you a secure built-in environment? So we don't have to have all these bolt-ons that you put on top of it to secure. So that's the vision that we have. Secure cloud, easy to build applications for the methodology, and then any cloud, whoever you want to run it in, private, public, and any provider. That's kind of the goal I see as a customer of VMware, right?
Well, it's very interesting. There are two major threads that you brought out in your conversation, or at least I perceive that. One is a multi-cloud, and the other one is about security.
Yeah.
And I would presume that your multi-cloud also encompasses data centers because it's a hybrid world out there, or do you see this purely as a multi-cloud environment? And
no, it is. It is. I see it as hybrid. I see it as hybrid. Any corporation at a certain size, I see it as a hybrid multi-cloud. Meaning, you would have some private and some public cloud, and you will have multiple public clouds, right? Now, why would you not choose to have? The thing I ask my friends is, why would you not choose to have? Would you actually not want to take advantage of the multiple clouds out there to maximize our innovation, or would you just lock with one, right? And you don't have to make the choice. You have you can develop in one environment and put it on any cloud that you want. To me, that seems like a more sensible journey. And I'm a hardcore believer that for companies like the size of VMware, or even any company worth a bit of scale, it's good to have a hybrid strategy. It's good to have a hybrid strategy. I feel very comfortable knowing that I'm closing my books, all my applications, that is this week. I'm peaceful. I'm not dependent on anybody else, and I have all my cloud providers, but I can close the books with the equipment and the data center I have. That's a very comforting feeling.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And with regards to security, beyond just Carbon Black, I'm sure you folks have a security strategy. And could you enumerate upon the security strategy and any issues, as you alluded to, there's a cloud security built into the cloud directly. Anything that you can expand more on the security strategy, as well as any other challenges that you see in securing the cloud?
Yeah, I think so. So the way, and I wouldn't say all of us have reached the nirvana yet, but the way we've been reaching the security goal typically has been to buy multiple tools, right? I mean, so that's been the story for me so far, and we actually have a discussion between the security team and myself to say, how much tools are you going to buy? And then you need people to run these tools, and then there's another supplier or vendor would come and say, hey, we are an AI ML company, we are focusing on security, but we tell you before the other company catches you so many problems, we catch more problems, and this is what we can do. I have enough software telling me all the problems that I have. I have exposure here. I need things to be fixing it, patching it, and don't even tell me there's a problem. Sort it out. So this built-in inherent cloud security is what I want. Why would I start with an insecure environment or insecure container, and then try to put a whole bunch of band-aids on it to fix it? So another way to think about it is some operating systems when we started were so inherently leaky that we had to buy a whole bunch of antivirus and other kind of software to kind of protect it. Otherwise, it was unusable. Look how far we have come now. Some of the operating systems are pretty stable. The same vendors have become a lot more stable. So you don't really need to put so many band-aids on them, right? So I remember putting 2 antivirus products on every client just because I felt like if one didn't catch, the other would catch. That doesn't sound like a sustainable strategy for a long time. So this built-in security model seems to make the most sense, where we believe that the security industry is broken. It has to be fixed. And Rajan, you will remember this. I think the day before the internet, the days were simple, but you shouldn't be able to. You can't just send an email to somebody and then put a cookie in it, and somebody clicks it, and then compromise and take over the kernel. That seems to be like and we're talking about the same problem. Don't phishing attacks and people click and they take it over and take over the entire kernel. How does that happen? So this has to be fixed by design, and so that's one. The second is a container virtual machine makes it easier to do patching and other kind of things. You patch one place and all your virtual machines are patched. Imagine going into machine after machine, a cloud after cloud, and patching that environment. That's so painful for CISOs and infrastructure staff. So we are pushing very hard, and I'm really very pleased that VMware is taking it on, is with Carbon Black and with other vendors that we've taken, make it inherent. So if you take an IoT kind of example, which is people are not paying much attention to IoT because it's out of sight, out of mind. You have your cameras. Most of the cameras are running probably some version of Linux. It's probably bought by some security team or physical security team or your real estate folks. And they are probably on your network. And probably the password is admin, right? Because they would be convenient for them to change. And it's probably running an old version of Linux and nobody knows how to upgrade it, because if you upgraded this, the camera may stop working. So that you can imagine how many of those devices are going to be in the world. I mean, I found out I had problems with my Zoom from home, and I thought I had fiber to my home. And then I found out I had 19 IoT devices that I installed, but I didn't even know that I had them. I forgotten they were IoT devices. And so I had to disable all of them so I could get my work done. But the example is, first, if you see that, it'll be good to know how many devices you have. It'll be good to have a discovery. It's useful. It'll be good to know here are some exposures you have. But then I want to update them. I want to be able to, from the network, pretty much, put a circle around them and say, these things are infected. I don't want them to infect the rest of the LAN or rest of the network, right? So, and you cannot shut them down. And there are certain places like my garage door opener could be an IoT device, which is pretty critical to enter the building. So if it gets infected, I want to quarantine it. I don't want to shut it down. I just don't want it to infect other devices. So all those kind of challenges, you have to build in the security from a network standpoint, from a operating system environment, the cloud environment standpoint. So I think we are one of the companies who are uniquely positioned to do that.
Fantastic.
For people.
I would like to recommend a couple of more companies you can acquire from me to.
We bought enough. We bought enough from you, Rajan. I get the headache. All the business units guys to get all this glamour. Then I get the headache to integrate all of it. But thank you. Yeah, move forward.
So along those same thread and talking about, when we were in Juniper together, we had this initiative called Juniper on Juniper.
Yes.
And if you remember that, what is the VMware on VMware, the dogfooding approach?
Yeah.
And, how are you approaching that?
So we call it drinking your own champagne. We don't call it dog food because we love what we make. And VMware, we just went on steroids on this one. There is some VMware on VMware session every day in every part of the world with one of the members of IT in my team. So it initially started with me just telling the story of how VMware IT uses VMware and effectively, right? First is we use everything we make. So I have the VeloCloud box that VMware bought from you. It's sitting in my home. I have a VeloCloud box sitting in my home, and it's doing a great job of my video conferencing, etc. So I use the SD-WAN. We use all the cloud products that we make. We use Carbon Black. We use Pivotal. So all the product we're proud. And then from an IT standpoint, we give a practitioner viewpoint. So when other CIOs come and say, most CIOs know me, and so I cannot go and do a PowerPoint sales pitch to them. They pretty much come back and say, hey, Bask, does Workspace ONE work? And that's the question, is yes or no? And I say yes, and let me show you the 10 things I can do with it. And then you should talk to the sales team really to get the full picture. But here's how, without this, I would be dead. I can't issue laptops to my people who are remote. So it's a very practitioner's viewpoint on how VMware uses VMware IT. That we do. I would think if you ask the sales team members, it's by request. So we don't push the sales team members' request for us to come and do these presentations. The sessions, we probably get the top billings for sessions. The customers come, they're expecting a sales pitch, and there's nothing. We just say, how did we go through COVID? How do you do remote? How do you enable SAP virtually? How do you virtualize Oracle? And they sometimes ask us questions about Microsoft, Google. We answer everything. Zoom, do you like Skype? Do you like Zoom? Whatever you want to know, we answer. No, it's not just about VMware, but we obviously showcase the VMware products. I believe it's probably one of our best selling mechanisms because it's very authentic, right? It's so I don't get into commissions and sales. None of us get paid commissions on this, but we pride ourselves to say, that we have repeat folks who want to come and listen to our story. Every salesperson wants to get their customers to listen to our story, and our ratings are pretty high every time we do this.
Fantastic. Along the way, I'd of course like to brag a little bit that Fabric co-created VeloCloud.
Yes. That was my thing. That's why I talked about VeloCloud. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Good product. Great. We got good people as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, welcome. But what is your thought on the untethered situation we are in? Obviously, SD-WAN plays into that thing. But if you can give a thought on how it has transformed or how it has become more pertinent in this times.
Yeah. I think the first one that is important is, you can talk about Work 2.0 or whatever you want. I think there are certain things that this has come to stay. A lot of people are realizing that this is a very effective way of working. So we have done not just emails and video conferences, we are doing sales kickoffs, we're doing customer calls. So this is the new norm for us. And number one has been employee experience for us. So there's a whole set of products on employee experiences. Zoom is a good example of that. It's not the product that VMware makes, but we use it, and they are customers of ours. But it's a good example, right? I mean, you click and you get, and we would have been in a deep trouble without tools such as that. But how can you make that also secure and integrated so there's no passwords and sign-ons and so on? So I'll give you one example. Normally, nobody says anything good about IT. The thing with my profession is infrastructure is broken, is invisible unless it's broken, right? So nobody even knows till if it doesn't work, then they say the whole world is falling apart. So I'm never used to people saying, hey, Bass, good job today. The only person who has done that so far is Michael Dell used to surprise me every once in a while and say, Bass, nothing broke today. And I would say, I'll wait for the punchline, thinking something is coming. He says, no, there's no punchline. I just want to tell you, I'm sure you never heard that. Nothing is broken today. Everything works. So having said that, I think the important thing that, for us could be, it is how do you get the recognition and the team built that are kind of resilient and have the grit to act through this kind of sessions is what that becomes more critical. This is going to be an interesting challenge for us because we have new employees joining in Europe, and I saw a tweet come. Nowadays nobody gives me feedback or email; they just tweet it, and I was worried about what is this person saying, and she just said, "Hey, I just started yesterday. I got a VMware laptop delivered to me, a Dell laptop delivered to me with the sleeves, with instructions, with Workspace ONE. I clicked and installed, and voila, I'm in. I got two-factor authentication. I got my email. I'm working. I'm Zooming. What a badass company to join." Well, I've never gotten comments like that. Every once in a while people say thank you, but that's about it. And to see a tweet and a lot of other new employees jumping in, that's a good feeling. So this thing called employee experience has become very critical for us on how do you deliver superior employee experience in this kind of an environment. And working from home, you got to work on all processes and technologies that people are working on because, I work from my laptop. I have it, my iPad, and I have my wife's iPad next to me just in case this one doesn't work. And then I have my phone. So we all have multiple devices. All our things has to work on every device. It has to be seamless, no big passwords. I don't have a help desk. All my help desk is self-help, more or less. The help desk, I do have a help desk. We call it kiosk. But a lot of it is self-service and a lot of it is, virtual again. If something doesn't work, they either monitor and call me and tell me, something is screwed up. In fact, they're monitoring your VeloCloud, my VeloCloud box. And every time I tell them something is not working, they say, no, it's working fine. We're watching it. So I think that employee experience is pretty important. That has to change in this. So it's not just remote working. You got to give a very unique experience. And this is a good lesson to learn from the newer companies like Zoom, who are obsessed about customer service, right? So that's one. The other thing is there is tons of opportunities to reduce the ease of make the ease of doing business with us better with our customers. What is nice is a lot of customers expected to come, and they will still probably expect us, but we had to fly over to see the customers, make a whole bunch of presentations, or get them to our EBCs to make presentations and so on. They are a lot more open these days to have a authentic chat like this, which I never thought was possible, right? So now we're having a lot of discussions globally on a chat very similar to how we are doing, and then showing the things that we are doing without a big, EBC or an executive briefing centers or things like that. So that has been a change for us. Resiliency is very important. I can't send people to the office to fix it. So things have to work. So we have multiple failure mode, disaster recovery, etc. The other thing is IT has shown in a lot of companies here is initially people thought about IT as only the people providing infrastructure. Now my teams along with HR and communications, etc. We run the critical management team. So they are the ones who say which sites get shut down when, how do you bring people back, should you wear a mask or not, and all those kind of decisions. So the CEOs and the executive team don't have to spend their bandwidth. They can spend their bandwidth helping customers. So I think those are some of the changes that have happened. Is I think IT has been put in the limelight of the places where IT has done a good job. People feel like maybe these folks should handle more of these crisis and crisis management and operations part of it because they've demonstrated the capability to do that. So I see that change happening a lot. And the last thing, Rajan, I've been getting a lot of calls. There are some companies, some people who are shining at this stage, and there are some companies not doing so well. Okay, and I'm not going to name people, but you could see that some companies, because they had good digital and IT capabilities, they switched from even grocery shops. They switched from a bricks and mortar to an e-commerce and they'd say now you can, if you go to Safeway, for example, you order online, walk up, and they deliver, and they put the goods in your car. They're able to do all that very quickly with all digital. There are big chains right now who tell us that they cannot do those things because they don't have the digital framework to make it happen. They say it'll take them 2-3 years to set up a shopping experience, online shopping experience. And I'm thinking, my God, in these days, 2 years is a long time, and we would have this crisis for a long time. So a lot of CEOs and CFOs and boards are going to look for changes in IT leadership, because I think a lot of them have realized how critical IT is. And it's important to talk about digital transformation in the future, but it's very important to get your operations right as well, right? So as I learned this from a CIO of one of the German companies. He said that if your operations is not working, don't talk about strategy. And if your operations is working, don't talk about operations, because nobody cares, right? So I said that's a good lesson. So when you get 99.9% uptime, don't keep on saying that you have a 99.9% uptime, because people say, what about 100, right? So that's the right time to go to strategy. But if you have 80% uptime, better not talk about digital transformation or strategy or so on, because nobody cares.
No, you're a man from my own heart. I mean, we call the seamless movement from being in a brick and mortar area to back at home and having the same experience. We, at least in Fabric, we'd like to refer to it as a seamless mobility experience. You're
Right.
constantly mobile, not just the device, but your experience, your apps, everything. But along those lines, also, there has been a big emphasis or a big talk about edge clouds and how they're moving to the edge. And there is also talk about transformation of the connectivity in 5G.
Mm-hmm.
Where does VMware play into this movement, and how do you see the significance of all of these with respect to companies? How significant are these transformations or changes?
Yeah, I think first of all, this pendulum keeps swinging back and forth. As you know, if you've been in the industry long enough, we start with mainframes to distributed computers to PCs, and then back to somewhat, cloud, internet, and so on. And it keeps going back and forth. So I don't think we are stuck with just one cloud sitting somewhere else. Because what tends to happen is once you have more and more IT capabilities, we want to do more and more with it, right? So now the edge cloud is absolutely here to stay. You cannot have a Tesla that is collecting so much data, and then calling up a private cloud, a public cloud, and saying, "Can I update the data? Should I stop to hit this person, or should I continue driving? What should I do?" You can't do things like that. So people like me, who worked in real time 25, 30 years ago, thought it was dead. And who's going to do manufacturing? We're going to just find cheap places to do it, etc. I'm actually very excited that I have a feeling this is also going to change a few things fundamentally. Is we are going to do more manufacturing in local countries. It has just exposed us to how exposed are we to overseas supply chains and so on. And good boards are going to ask questions on, what percentage of your goods are actually made here, and what happens if you have another attack or the oil prices goes up or something else happens. Every country, not just United States. So which means we have to do more automation and more work and more manufacturing. And in order to do that, you have enormous amount of data being collected in the factories and the autonomous driving cars and so on. I don't think the cloud is gonna, putting it in a data center. There's law of physics on how much data you can push through the pipe. So edge cloud is here to stay with Wi-Fi, with 5G, and all the other technologies. So I'm a huge believer that is the question is when, and how fast is it going to happen. So, but I clearly see the future with edge cloud. The VMware's play is edge cloud becomes another one of our multi-cloud strategy. So you need your hybrid cloud, your private cloud, public cloud, multiple public clouds, and your edge cloud. And you may want to move your applications from one place to the other. You can't just have one team handling edge cloud, another team handling your data center, and a third team handling cloud. You want your system admins to be able to handle all of them together. And they call it the IT and OT kind of mix, right? So typically the IT folks run the business systems like SAP and email and so on. And the OT, the operational technology folks, run the factories and other kind of things before. But that has to merge. I mean, you can't have duplicate sort of shadow ITs and so on. So I think VMware's place is to mainly go between how can you move workloads between cloud to cloud? How can you administer all of these clouds, including the edge cloud? And then how can we make our partners who provide the 5G networks, right, the different telecom providers and so on, how can we make them actually effective? This field very well. They all have to modernize their environment. They have tried different attempts to modernize, open, try to go to different architecture, and they have to get to a more modern infrastructure environment in order to serve. So and to do 5G and other kind of things. So how can we enable those telecommunications customers to be more effective? Would be another place for VMware to play.
And along those lines, you mentioned Tesla, and you mentioned other manufacturing being onshored, let's say.
Yes.
Yeah. In the IoT space, as it relates to the industrial IoT space, what do you think are the disruptive innovations that are emerging? You have had a rich background in Honeywell and other manufacturing areas. You're now seeing a massive sea change in how manufacturing potentially can change. What do you think are the disruptive innovations in the industrial IoT space?
I think like vision systems have been fabulous. I mean, I remember in J&J, I had to work on systems that had to find a difference between a peach-colored pill and an orange-colored pill and a pink pill, and the success rate was terrible. I mean, the human can look at it much faster than the vision systems could, right? So it was so difficult to do this vision systems. Nowadays, you get a camera, a good camera and software and algorithms, and the compute is so good that so that has been a disruptor, and clear disruptor. Natural language processing has been a disruptor. I've seen software that do very, very good translation. And we are using. We all made fun of Siri and Alexa and so on. I'm sure you did, and I did. It's actually working, and the Tesla is actually working when you say, take me to the office. It seems to know what you're doing. So that is coming pretty well. But in manufacturing, I think robotics robotics used to be so expensive to do. That costs have come down tremendously. 5G would be a big advantage and disruptor there as well. So I think, and AI, ML, I mean, I don't like to talk much about it because a lot of people just use it as a selling mechanism. But because of the amount of compute you're able to get at the edge for a relatively low cost, you can actually, get, an enormous amount of data. And the more data you have, the smarter your AI systems will be. So those things are disruptors generally. The thing that I worry about it is a lot of even my colleagues have never visited a manufacturing floor. They don't know what it is. Because there's no manufacturing companies, there's no shop floor that you can go and look So when I describe what happens in a shop floor, a lot of people look at it as like some science fiction. In fact, a lot of people go to Tesla factory, which is impressive, but they're just surprised that there are robots in factory floor. And I tell them that's how every car in the world is being made, is with robots. No human being does it. It's just that you have not gone to a car factory in such a long time in this country, etc. So I believe the roadblock is going to be, do you have domain knowledge? Like industrial internet, you could clearly say when an IT person talks to Honeywell's or Schneider or another factory floor, they don't get it. They're talking about multi-cloud and AWS and SD-WAN and so on. And these guys look and say, no, I want this robot to work faster. I want a vision system to push this parts through quicker. I need my scheduling systems to be downloaded, and I want to do it in real time. They know a lot about real time. So, I mean, it's like, I don't know if you have expertise to do that kind of work. So I'm just worried about, do you have enough domain knowledge? We have to bring that back. Unfortunately, Rajan, they're going to have to make people like you come back and work.
Thank you, Bask. I still remember the days of my operating a lathe and
yeah.
in the workshop in college.
Yeah. So I think we have to do that. I mean, obviously the folks who are coming out of college and so are super bright. So what it took us years to learn, they could probably learn it in weeks and months, but it's still weeks and months. It's not nanoseconds, right? So I worry about it because every time I speak about shop floor or IoT or industrial networking and what happens in that domain and so on, I get blank stares. So that's the only thing I worry about is, how much of this expertise have you actually lost, and how do you quickly ramp it up?
And what would be your advice to the Fabric, which is focused on providing solutions in the industrial IoT space? I got the fact that we have to talk the language of the shop floor, understand the shop floor. Anything else from the Fabric, from an infrastructure perspective, that we should be looking at?
Yeah, I think so. I think from just a working mechanism, the bridge they call IoT to OT bridge is pretty important to know. So, I mean, if you just talk the operating technology, the decisions are going to be made in the IT field. I mean, the factories were able to get away buying. They used to call. I used to be a factory floor operator. I never called this a VAX VMS or a system. I just called it a rack handler. So, and the IT guys would not know what that means. And the rack handler had a whole bunch of PDP-11s or VAX VMS or big computers that are networked and software and everything else. But you try to get behind the IT teams. So, but you can get away with that because now you hook everything to the internet, and there's security reasons and architecture reasons to do that. So Fabric has to be able to translate, has to go to both the places. They have to go both to the OT providers, and they have to go to the IT providers. You don't want to get caught in the middle where your OT people love you because you focus a lot of that, and the IT guy says, "I've never heard of you. What the hell is this?" They know Dell, they know VMware, they know Amazon, they know Oracle, those are the software they know. And you'll be surprised how many IT folks actually know things like PLCs and ladder logic or controllers or things like that. So that would be a good way to say is how do you split your strategy to kind of bridge both the OT and IT thing from a sales standpoint and product standpoint. It'll be good to reassure people. And you could, instead of saying I have a hyper-converged storage sitting in your factory floor to the OT person, it'll be good to say something like, I have think of it like a cloud in a box I have for your robot. So everything you need is done. When you talk to the IT and security person, you got to reassure them it's a really hyper-converged infrastructure. Because then they say, oh, I know, I got thousands of hyper-converged, so you got one more there in the factory floor that can handle it. So that becomes almost a number one opportunity, is a translation that you have to do. And then the second thing is there are certain things that like in real time, if you make it, speed and efficiency becomes important. So I think, if I go back to the Tesla example, you got to make a sensor, interrupt service routine, whatever that senses something, makes a stop right away, right, automatically. So that speed. So you need to build both devices and software that are that mission critical for the. So I think I would say Fabric to focus on quality. and that mission critical real time and other kind of things, because big companies would find it very difficult to focus on that. They can definitely do it, but I think it's going to be done by startups who are obsessed. I mean, look, there are big, large companies doing collaboration, video conferencing software, and so on, and then nobody, out of the blue, somebody comes and just disrupts the whole thing. And if you go back and think, you say that makes no sense. Why would you get into the space? There's too many players. But the reason Fabric exists, Silicon Valley exists, and startups and entrepreneurs exist is they got a relentless focus on something like that. And I think in IoT, quality and industrial things, quality is very, very important. I mean, it's life and death. So just you being the most efficient provider is good enough, I think.
Fantastic.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So two things. One is speak the language, the appropriate language to the OT people, and then to the IT people. So you're a bridge. And the second is relentless focus on quality and make sure the real-time systems are all working. Thanks very much, Bask. It has been a really informative talk, but I'd like for you to give one final advice to entrepreneurs who come and who talk to you. You've seen a lot. You've been through quite a journey. What, with respect to entrepreneurs, what is the advice that you would give to them if they come and talk to VMware companies, large companies like that? How do you suggest they approach somebody like a VMware?
Yeah, I think first is the reason entrepreneurs are successful is they are kind of stubborn, right? They take something impossible and stick with it. But at the same time, this reason a lot of entrepreneurs fail is because they're very stubborn. So I'm sometimes surprised how little validation they do of the product before they actually build the product. Some people have gone and said, "I built this. I've seen this use case. This is very critical," and they go and build something. And I'm thinking, you've done no validation with any real customers or CIOs or anybody else. So it just surprises me. So not every one of us is a Steve Jobs who can just have a vision and just design something without any input from folks, if you will. So I strongly recommend people to have a strong advisory body, somebody who's mentorship and other kind of stuff to navigate that. So that is one thing I do, and I think it's good to be stubborn as an entrepreneur, because you have to fight through some odds, but you can also get arrogance. And that's where a lot of failures, and I don't mean arrogance, I mean intellectual arrogance. So it's good to validate and say, this is a real need. Will people actually buy? Excuse me. And then the second thing I say is it has to be somewhat aligned to the VMware's vision, right? I think so. If I was doing it as an entrepreneur, I would spend some time analyzing what is core for VMware, what is core for Cisco, what is core for other companies. If you think that you need a partnership with one of those companies, I think which you have done extremely well is aligning with their strategy. There's no point trying to sell milk or spinach or something to VMware. We're not going to buy it. It'll be an interesting product, but what are we going to do with it? But it's as simple as that. A lot of people misalign that, and so spending some time on and VMware does share a lot of this with people, right? What is our strategy? If you listen to our customer pitches, where do you think we're going to logically grow? And we are actively looking for companies to buy and help us grow or partner with. So it's not like we are anti-companies, but very, very few companies have actually found that alignment. And to try to move a big company to your vision is very difficult. So you need to a little bit, get into the slipstream of where the larger company is going, I would believe. And you're a master at that. You've done very well in aligning that. But I think that is another good lesson learned. So the other thing is, I always say is people always tell me, hey, you got a lot of enterprise experience. When they say that, it means I'm an old guy. I get it. But can I get a cup of coffee and pick your brain? Because I have some idea that I want to go. And I'm thinking, so just a coffee is going to give you, if it's really that simple, wouldn't I be starting companies myself, right? So I think you have to have a longer term relationship. And I, like you've done advisory councils, some people, they're surprising, a lot of people want to be good mentors, so they're not doing it necessarily just to be a part of the profit, but to kind of develop and see. So finding good advisors finding good board members and so on, so that when other CIOs look at your board, they feel like it's not a no-name company. Because that's my worry, is when I look at a company, who's this, and what do they buy? Would I take a risk with them? So those are some of the things I have kind of advised folks.
So, Bask, thank you very much for your time. I also know personally you are passionate about at least one thing, and now I know about two things. One is education, and how do you spread education? And I noticed that you got a stack of guitars, and I also know that you told me I couldn't afford you.
Yeah, I know. I know you can afford a lot of things, Rajan, but I'm so good that you don't have money to pay me to play.
So, finally, any thoughts on your personal passions that keep you beyond just work?
Yeah, I think these days, to me, it could be a reflection of the times. It could be a reflection of the fact that I'm getting the gray beard. We always say we want to change the world. I mean, Juniper, we said this, and tech companies do a lot of good things, so I don't want to take it away from them. But are you really changing the world? Are you really doing good? You're not doing evil. That's good, but it'll be nice to do good. So that's why education I'm passionate about is, that's a good equalizer. If you look at what I had over my cousins and other people in my family or my neighbors, etc., I had education, and I'm fortunate enough that my father was able to provide that for me. So it's a great equalizer. So with the age of remote learning and so on and technology, I think that we could provide the same learning that Stanford gets to everybody in the world. That's possible. So that's one. The other thing, but that's where my thoughts are, is I find it very difficult to be just excited about going in and generate another $30 billion in revenue. It has to be more. It has to be doing something really good and life-changing for people. So this thoughts is, in these times especially, makes me more reflect about what is that next journey that you want to do with the company, by yourself personally. So that's where my passion is. I'm reading more and more about people who are, Bill Gates is a good inspiration, right? People always say he's the richest guy in the world. He can write the checks. But I know that it's difficult for me to write a check, and I'm not poor. I can actually ask. So it takes a heart to write that, and then he's also passionately involved in doing something with the money, not just writing the check. So those are the things that I'm trying to get myself into in the future.
Thank you, Bas. Thank you very much for your time and insight, and thank you all for watching. And please stay safe. We'll be back with another Spotlight episode soon. Thanks again.
Thank you, Rajan. Namaste.
Namaste.